I knew the apocalypse was coming. But instead of hoarding food or building a shelter, I broke into hospital morgues to steal corpses, took out a $200 million loan for raw meat and blood, all so I could immediately gorge myself when I turn. At a suburban farm, a butcher in a bloody apron walked up to me. "Boss Moo, your 1,500 cows, 3,000 pigs, and 10,000 chickens are ready." I nodded, scanning the slabs of fresh meat wrapped in plastic and rows of blood plasma jars. Satisfied, I paid them and sent them off. Once they left, I walked up to the meat and waved my hand, sweeping everything into my storage space. My post-rebirth cheat code. In a few days, the end of the world arrives. 50% of humanity will turn into zombies on day one. Normal people reborn before the apocalypse would hoard canned food and bottled water. But me, I preferred raw flesh and blood because I am one of that 50%. Zombies devour meat to absorb energy and mutate. A zombie constantly fed with fresh flesh will evolve at a terrifying speed. The end times are starting, and I need cash to hoard more. I own a farm, a supermarket, and 2 houses. Big assets, but barely any liquid cash. I was wondering where to get quick money when a Mercedes G-Wagon and a van pulled up. My eyes lit up. My piggy bank had arrived. A middle-aged guy with a thick gold chain stepped out. It was Zhao Peng, a big-shot developer who had been eyeing my farm for years to build luxury apartments. I had always refused to sell, so he came to intimidate me today with a pack of hired thugs. He wanted to squeeze me into a corner. Zhao Peng strutted into the yard, looking smug. "Brother Moo, you know why I'm here." Thought about the land, he got straight to the point, acting polite before unleashing his thugs. But I just shrugged and nodded. "Sure, I'll take your last offer." "Wait, what?" Zhao Peng stared at me, completely caught off guard. Once he realized I was serious, he grinned and whipped a contract from his leather bag. But since it felt too easy, he hesitated. "Brother Moo, why?" "The sudden change of heart. I need quick cash," I replied. His eyes darted. To him, that made total sense. Besides real estate, his real money came from loan sharking. After all, those thugs did not work for free. A light bulb went off in his head. "Need more money? Maybe your big brother Zhao can help." Looking at his chubby, greedy face, I suddenly found him incredibly cute. I sold the farm and secured an $80 million loan, pooling $200 million in total. With the farm gone, I needed to pack up and head to my supermarket to store the new shipments. Just as I was about to leave, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Liu Ruyan. She was my girlfriend. In my past life, after turning into a zombie, I got her desperate texts. Starving in her dorm, she begged for food. I dragged my stiff, rotting body through the danger to save her. But when I arrived, I found her cozying up with 3 guys. The moment they realized I was a zombie, they beat me to death with clubs. Honestly, my zombie state was just an excuse. "Babe," her text read, "My birthday is next month. What are you getting me?" "Your gift is already ready," I replied, my expression completely cold. "When the apocalypse hits next month, I will show up with a lovely little surprise. Besides, fresh humans are excellent resources. I might as well keep her alive for now." After packing, I rode my scooter to my supermarket. A girl ran up, clutching a ledger and gasping for breath. "Boss, you are back. Please check the invoices." She was Su Xiaoru, my part-time warehouse clerk, working for tuition. Lately, the constant stalking had exhausted her. I nodded, seeing her pale face. "It's late. Go home and rest." "Okay, boss. I have morning classes tomorrow, so I will be in by afternoon." I stared at her. "Actually, don't come back. I am facing some issues, so I am shutting down. I will double your pay for this month. Take care." "Thank you, boss." She bowed her eyes, reflecting a quiet sadness. I dismissed the rest of the staff and tore down the supermarket sign. My only task for the next few days was stocking up. I called major suppliers, slaughterhouses, and farms. Delivery trucks arrived in endless lines, mostly carrying raw meat, along with survival gear, cleaning supplies, and some basic weapons. Time flew. Soon it was the eve of the apocalypse. Every single shelf in the supermarket sat empty, safely tucked inside my dimensional storage. I sat in absolute silence, enjoying my final piece, when the metal shutters were suddenly slammed open. "Boss Moo, I am hungry. Give us some food." The speaker was a punk with dyed blonde hair, a local street thug. Without looking up, I said, "We are closed. No food." The thug stared at the empty shelves, dumbfounded. "Business was great. Why close down? You were stocking up like crazy last week." The leader sneered, looking me up and down. "Well, boss Moo, you can't just let us starve. How about you lend us some cash for dinner?" I didn't want these lowlifes ruining my quiet evening, So I tossed a thick stack of bills over $1,000 right at them. To a future zombie, money is just trash. Blonde hair gaped at the cash, thrilled. Not bad, kid. You respect us and we respect you. Let's go. He waved them off. But maybe because of too much smoking, his throat hitched. He hacked up a gross glob of spit and launched it onto my clean floor. Hold on, I snapped. I stared at him. The three thugs paused when I walked toward him slowly. The floor is dirty now. The leader burst out laughing. I just spit, big deal. His lackeys folded their arms, sneering at me, completely relaxed. They figured since I paid them off easily, I was a pushover, but in a flash, a cold blade leaped into my hand. I drove it straight through the leader's neck. His eyes bulged, filled with sudden, helpless terror. He gagged, trying to scream, but only thick blood spilled out. He collapsed with a heavy thud. He died without ever understanding why I snapped. The other two froze absolutely paralyzed by the sudden, brutal murder. They were just cheap punks. Bro, please don't kill us. We won't say a word, we swear. My lips curled into a gentle smile. Go ahead. Leave. Relieved, they scrambled and bolted for the exit. But behind them, I raised my loaded crossbow and pulled the trigger. A bolt punched cleanly through the first guy's skull, sending him face first onto the tiles. His buddy spun around in horror, only to see me loading and aiming another bolt straight at him. The kid was petrified. Bro, please. Before he could finish, a bolt pierced his forehead, silencing him forever. Silence returned to my empty store. This crossbow really packed a punch. I stood over the bodies, satisfied. With a wave, I swept all three corpses into my storage space. To me, meat is meat, dead or alive, it is all survival fuel. Later, I returned to my high-rise penthouse. On the 20th floor, I had reinforced steel bars installed over the windows to block flying mutant beasts later on. I also set up solar panels. Even as a zombie, I will still need electricity. Everything was ready. After a long, sleepless night, the sun rose. I glanced at the wall clock, only 1 minute left. I stood by the glass, looking down at the quiet streets. Behind me, the hands ticked closer, signaling that a new era was starting. Suddenly, the sky turned blood red. Pedestrians stopped staring up in confusion. Why is the sun red? Then people collapsed on the sidewalks. Cars lost control, crashing into each other in rapid succession. Pure chaos. Exploded below. Wake up, honey! What is wrong? A woman shook her husband, but when he opened his eyes, his face contorted. He tore into her neck. She screamed in agony, her clothes instantly soaked in crimson. Her eyes rolled back as her body spasmed violently. Similar horror unfolded across every corner of the city. Standing by the window, my vision faded to black. I collapsed. When I opened my eyes again, I was a zombie. I tried to speak, but only a raspy groan escaped my throat. I had lost my speech. Just as expected, my body felt heavy, stiff, and numb. My pain receptors were dead, but my movement speed was pathetic. I was just a basic, low-tier zombie. Dragging my stiff legs to the dining table, I tied a clean white bib around my neck. I pulled a slab of raw beef from my storage space, plated it, and sunk my teeth in. The raw meat, which used to smell metallic and foul, tasted like heaven. As I ate, my stiff joints loosened and power flooded my veins. I kept devouring plate after plate. After eating about 2 cows' worth of beef, I was finally full. My movements became incredibly smooth, far more agile than an average human. I must have reached C-grade already. I walked to the window. Out there, the world was in ruins. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. A text from Liu Ruyan. Babe, are you okay? There are monsters everywhere. I am so scared and worried about you. I am trapped with no food. Your supermarket has supplies, right? Can you bring some over? Sure, sit tight. I'll head over soon. I replied with a smirk. Of course I would go get her. She was my premium fresh stock. But it was too risky right now. Despite my power, I needed to lie low and evolve further to guarantee absolute safety. She had no clue she was texting a zombie. You must save me. I love you. I didn't bother replying. Right now she was trapped in that dorm with 3 other guys, probably doing things that would get censored, yet she still claimed she loved me. Besides, she only texted because calling was too risky. Meanwhile, my neighborhood group chat was exploding with endless, desperate cries for help. Scrolling through the group chats, I got thinking. Sure, I'm a zombie, but I have no interest in eating my neighbors. Human flesh tastes terrible, and beef packs way more energy. A true king needs an army of the undead to rule, so I decided to recruit a few lackeys. Grabbing my keys, I headed out. Just 1 floor down, I spotted a figure lurking in the stairwell corner. A female zombie was making soft groaning noises. She wore a clean white outfit, hair in a ponytail, looking surprisingly neat, since we were both zombies. Naturally, didn't attack me. In fact, her pale eyes showed a clear hint of fear. She could sense my superior rank. I recognized her as my downstairs neighbor. Before the outbreak, she was a state-level high jumper, and her legs were long, straight, and packed with power. Even as a zombie, she wasn't stiff or slow. She moved as fast as an ordinary human, even without eating any flesh. It seems the undead have different levels of potential, retaining human traits. She had great potential, and if I trained her, she could become an agile elite. She was the one. I tossed her a bag of frozen steak. Enticed by the raw meat, she dropped to her knees, tore the plastic open with her teeth, and wolfed down the frozen steaks. Once she finished the steak, she looked up, still hungry. Her dark eyes held a mix of fear, desire, and growing respect. I sent her a direct telepathic brainwave: follow me, and you will always have meat to eat. As a zombie leader, this is how I command my pack. She understood. Letting out a low grunt, she slowly bowed her head, the ultimate sign of zombie submission. Just like that, I got my first follower. Taking her with me, I roamed the hallways and soon found 2 more zombies with excellent raw potential. One was a former personal trainer built like a tank, the perfect tank-class brute. The other had no physical edge. He was a brilliant PhD scientist in life. I recruited him because I sensed a spark of pure intelligence behind his glazed eyes. If a zombie's intelligence is comparable to a dog, this PhD guy was easily a border collie. I ignored the other brainless walkers and led my 3 chosen recruits back to my apartment, looking them over to evaluate my brand new mini-horde. They were decent, but they still couldn't beat armed humans in a fight. If only they could use weapons. Then it hit me, why couldn't they? They just needed training. With a wave of my hand, I pulled 3 large meat cleavers out of my inventory. I threw the heavy metal machetes onto the floor. The clank of the steel caught their attention immediately, but they just stared, blankly confused. I sent a sharp mental command ordering them to pick up the weapons. This time they understood instantly and reached down. The former trainer went first, grabbing his machete right by the razor-sharp blade. Dark blood dripped from his sliced palm, but with zero sense of pain, he didn't care. Instead, he stared at me, smugly proud to be the most obedient. What an idiot. I face-palmed in disbelief. The PhD zombie, however, was brilliant. He gripped the weapon by the handle, gave it a few experimental swings, and quickly figured out how to use it. Pleased, I ordered the other 2 to follow his lead. Watching the demonstration, the other 2 got the message and adjusted their grips to the handles. It proved zombies could indeed be trained, but only by a supreme king. For the next few days, I stayed hidden inside my apartment, keeping a low profile, gorging on raw meat and training my new crew. They improved rapidly, graduating from basic machetes to tactical crossbows. Over those 3 days, the sheer amount of flesh I consumed triggered a rapid, powerful evolution in my own undead body. My physical form grew incredibly strong. My skin became as tough as vulcanized rubber. Scraping a sharp dagger across my arm only left a faint white line. Meanwhile, an intense itch built up inside my skull, signaling my evolution from C level to B level. Once I hit B level, a glowing crystal core would form in my skull, boosting my strength and unlocking a unique superpower. Every zombie gets a different ability. I was relaxing on my couch with a drink when sudden crashing sounds echoed from the street. I looked out the window and saw a heavily protected group of human survivors. They had wrapped newspapers and duct tape around their arms to prevent bites. Their bulky leader was furiously swinging a heavy fire axe at a locked rolling metal shutter door. Sparks flew with every strike. That shutter belonged to the supermarket I owned before the apocalypse. Clearly they were starving and desperate enough to risk the streets. The leader shouted, "This store has plenty of stock. Get inside and we won't starve." The big guy kept hacking at the lock, too terrified to stop for a second. Banging that loud was a dinner bell for the undead. "Hurry, Brother Wang. They are coming." One guy panicked. Out on the blood-soaked street, a few wandering zombies were already drawing near. 6 zombies charged, snarling as they sprinted forward. Gritting his teeth, the leader growled, "Hold them off. I am almost through the lock." 4 men rushed to join the brawl, but those low-level mindless zombies were slow and clumsy compared to humans, making them easy targets for quick headshots. Undead bodies piled up, but the zombie horde kept growing, flooding in from every alley. Utterly exhausted, the humans began to falter, and one man shrieked in agony as a walker bit deep into his hand. The others were too busy saving themselves to help. They watched in horror as he was dragged down and torn apart. Up on my balcony, I sipped a glass of red wine, enjoying the free show. Too bad they were wasting their energy. My store had already been cleared out into my inventory space. As the dying man's screams faded, the big leader cheered. The locks busted. "Get in!" He threw open the heavy shutter, and the remaining survivors scrambled toward the entrance with hope in their eyes. They bolted inside, but one guy tripped over a crawling, half-severed zombie and face-planted. "Help me!" he screamed. The guys inside grabbed his arms, pulling him with all their might, but the relentless zombies behind were already piling on top of him. No matter how hard they pulled, they couldn't free him. Worse, his body was wedged right under the shutter, keeping the metal door wide open. Hungry zombies began squeezing through the gap. "What do we do, Wang?" They cried in sheer panic. The leader swung, his axe crushing zombie skulls. Gritting his teeth, he yelled, "We can't save him? Let him go." Shut the door. Hesitant but desperate, they let go in unison. Left behind, the man on the floor stared up in pure helpless terror as he was dragged backward into the street. Pure survival instinct made him claw desperately at the bottom of the metal door. Seeing this, the leader's eyes went wild. He raised his heavy axe and chopped straight down, severing the man's hands. With a horrifying scream, the victim was dragged away, and the heavy shutter door finally slammed shut. Pretty ruthless, I thought from my window. I had to hand it to them. Sacrificing only 2 men to break in was impressive. Especially their leader, his cold, final decision was extremely smart. Too bad for them, my store was completely empty. Inside the dark supermarket, the 3 blood-stained survivors collapsed against the door, panting heavily. The horrific groans of the undead still echoed outside, but they were ecstatic. They had finally made it inside. Or so they thought. Suddenly, Wang Chong's eyes widened. He realized something was terribly wrong. The metal shelves before them were bone dry. "Where's all the food?" The others stared in shock. Gripping his axe, Wang Chong rushed deeper into the store to search. Their excitement crashed straight to rock bottom. The warehouse was completely cleared out. One of them, Dongzi, snapped wildly, swinging his crowbar at the walls. "We fought like hell and lost 2 guys, and we get absolutely nothing." "Calm down, Dongzi," Wang Kong barked, instantly grabbing his arm. Making noise would only draw a massive zombie herd. Dongzi panted heavily. "We are out of options." Wang Kong frowned. "Not necessarily. A store this clean means someone prepared for this apocalypse. It had to be the owner. I used to shop here. The owner lives in the apartment building right across the street. He must have stockpiled everything upstairs. Let's pay him a visit." Dongzi's eyes lit up with renewed hope. "The building's right there. We can make it." About 10 minutes later, the zombies outside finally dispersed. The metal shutter slid up just an inch. Moving like ghosts to avoid drawing attention, the 3 slipped through the narrow gap. Checking their surroundings, they bolted straight for my high-rise apartment complex. From my window, I watched their entire desperate escape play out. I knew they would come for me. Perfect. This was the ultimate chance to test my 3 newly trained zombie lackeys in live combat. With the power out, they had to climb the stairs. They fought past scattered zombies in the dark stairwell. Armed and ruthless, they cleared their way, easily reaching my top-floor apartment in no time. "This is the unit," Wang Kong whispered. Dongzi stepped forward and banged on my door, yelling, "I know you are in there. Open up, or we smash it down!" Wang Kong raised his heavy blood-soaked fire axe, his eyes cold and murderous. But just as he swung, the lock clicked open, revealing my tall, slender figure. Wang Kong glared at me and demanded, "Are you the supermarket owner?" I stared back in complete silence. "Stop playing dumb," Dongzi snarled. "We know you've got the loot. Hand it over, and we might let you live." I slowly opened my mouth, but only a wet, raspy rattle escaped my throat. The 3 stared in sheer horror. Holy crap, he's a zombie. Wang Kong raised his axe, ready to swing, when heavy footsteps echoed down the hall. That raspy sound I just made was actually a psychic call to my 3 personal bodyguards. Wang Kong spun around, alert. Still, they weren't terrified. They were battle-hardened veterans by now, and the footsteps sounded like a very small group. Sure enough, only 3 undead figures emerged from the shadows, but the survivors froze when they saw what my 3 lackeys were holding. Wang Chong's team frowned, sensing a bizarre shift in the air. As the figures drew closer, their jaws dropped in absolute shock. All 3 zombies raised heavy crossbows in perfect unison, aiming directly at the humans. Even the hot-headed Dongzi went completely pale. He lost all his bravado. "Wang, what do we do?" Wang Kong gritted his teeth. "Hold. I bet they don't even know how to fire those." Too late. I sent the mental command to fire. Thwip the brilliant PhD zombie shot. first nailing Dongzi right through the skull. Dongzi collapsed backward dead before he hit the ground. 2 more bolts whistled through the air. The former high jumper was incredibly accurate, her bolt piercing the second man's throat for a clean kill. Only the massive fitness trainer Zombie missed his mark, hitting Wang Kong's chest and puncturing his lung. Wang Kong screamed, collapsing in agony. He struggled to push himself up, but my brute trainer Zombie roared, lunging forward to pin him flat. Yet he didn't bite. Like a wolf pack, my minions never feed without their king's direct order. They didn't tear their prey apart right away. That's when Wang Kong finally realized these zombies were disciplined and their leader was me, his former grocery store boss. Realizing I might actually understand him, he fought through the pain and begged, "Please spare my life. I had no choice. Let me go, and I will do whatever you want." I just smiled, walking over step by step until I stood right over him. I grabbed the crossbow bolt buried in his chest and ripped it out. Blood sprayed everywhere, leaving him screaming in agony, utterly terrified of what this freakish zombie was about to do to him. But I was thinking about something else, how much virus energy was in his blood. I hadn't tested it yet. So I reached into my spatial inventory, pulled out a straw, and plunged it right into his wound. But I quickly frowned, turning to spit the dark red fluid onto the floor. High cholesterol. Seriously, watching this, Wang Kong was completely stunned. Even a zombie spat out his blood. He wondered if this meant I'd actually spare him. Too bad for him, his wishful thinking shattered a second later. I gave the command to kill. My 3 starving zombie underlings couldn't wait any longer, and the bloody feast ended quickly. Just then a phone rang nearby. I looked and realized it was coming from Wang Kong's discarded jacket. I picked it up and answered. A man's threatening voice came through. "Wang Chong, don't play smart with me. Get back here with the supplies. I have your wife. If you come back empty-handed, well." Hearing that, I understood. Wang Kong was forced to scavenge by these thugs, which explained his desperate pleading. I hung up. Still, I figured I could track these guys down. In this apocalypse, living humans are resources too. I will just treat them as delivery. Headquarters. I scrolled through Wang Kong's text messages on his phone and quickly found a clue. This delivery headquarters was located at a nearby construction site. I tossed the phone off the balcony and memorized the location. Back home, I sat on the sofa planning my next move. Running out of food eventually is a real threat. Sure, my spatial inventory is packed with raw flesh, but it won't last forever. Scavenging is easy early in this zombie apocalypse, but resources will dry up soon. It was time to go out and restock. I unlocked my phone and pulled up my chat with Liu Ruyan. She had flooded me with texts and missed calls. She was clearly losing her mind with panic. I finally replied, telling her I would head to her dorm tomorrow. A dark smile crept onto my face. A cruel glint flashed in my eyes. Time to harvest some fresh supplies. The next morning, I headed down to the street where my supermarket's old delivery truck was parked. I climbed into the driver's seat and signaled my 3 zombie minions that it was time to hunt inside the building. Low growls instantly echoed. The female zombie was the fastest, leaping straight out of a shattered window and landing right into the back of my truck. Next came the fitness trainer Zombie. He was even more massive now, making the pavement shake with every stride. Wow. Since the building door was only half open, his giant frame couldn't fit, so he just smashed straight through the door frame like a wild beast. Watching his rampaging behavior, I nicknamed him Tank, while Dr. the Intellectual Zombie was the last to come out. He took his time moving with an eerie, calm composure. After climbing into the back, he actually pulled the cargo door shut behind him. I slammed the gas pedal and sped straight toward the girls' dorm. When I parked, my 3 zombie underlings leaped out. Once Tank stepped out free from the cramped truck bed, he let out an earth-shattering roar of pure relief. The sound was so powerful it shattered the windows of the girls' dorm. Nearby, low-level zombies trembled in fear and immediately scattered, retreating to the girls' dorm. Inside, the survivors shivered in terror. Liu Ruyan was shaking. Did the zombies eat him? A well-built guy shrugged. Probably. I heard a truck outside. Your boyfriend must have driven right into a horde. He definitely attracted those monsters. Guess he really loved you, risking his neck like that. But Liu Ruyan just scoffed. Now what? He is such a useless loser. He couldn't even deliver a simple meal. Wait, did you hear that someone is coming up the stairs? The guy beside her pricked up his ears and grabbed a steel pipe nearby. The room went dead silent as they listened to the hallway. Footsteps were getting closer, mixed with the low growls of a zombie. "Well, looks like your simp boyfriend managed to break in," one of the boys whispered excitedly. They had run out of food days ago and were absolutely starving. Clutching steel pipes they had torn from chair legs, the three guys hid on both sides of the doorway. They planned to jump me the second I walked in and steal my supplies. From the start, the three never planned on letting me live anyway. One less mouth to feed meant more rations for them. A rhythmic knock rattled the door. Peeking through the peephole, Liu Ruyan saw my face. "Get inside quick," she whispered, throwing the door open. I stepped inside and she bolted the lock, acting like she was afraid I'd run. Instantly, the three boys stepped out with their pipes, surrounding me in a tight circle. One of them barked, "Where's the food? Where did you hide it? Hand it over right now." They had originally planned to knock me out right away, but seeing my hands empty, they had to ask first. I remained expressionless, slowly scanning the room before locking eyes with Liu Ruyan. Staring back at me, she didn't show even a hint of guilt. "Look, I lied to you, but in an apocalypse, it's every man for himself." I kept staring at her in silence. The three guys, completely out of patience, screamed, "Say something, you bastard. Where is the food? Hand it over, or we'll beat you to death." I parted my lips. Thanks to my recent evolution, I had regained some speech, though it was still rusty. A few raspy, chilling words slowly escaped my throat. "You are the food." Hearing those words, they gasped in absolute terror, their blood running cold. Realization hit them like a truck. Holy shit, he's a zombie. One boy's legs turned to jelly as he stumbled back. With a swipe of my hand, I shoved his steel pipe straight through his mouth, impaling him with brute force. Blood sprayed across the walls, leaving Liu Ruyan, and the other two turned deathly pale. Never having seen such brutality, their terror peaked. "Run," someone shrieked. The remaining three threw open the door, scrambling out into the hall. But as they turned, they slammed right into a massive wall of flesh. The impact sent them tumbling backward onto the floor. Looking up, they stared at Tank, a nearly 2-meter-tall wall of muscle. He let out a deafening roar that shook the corridor, then brought down a massive fist, instantly crushing one boy's skull like a melon splattering Liu. Ruyan's face with blood freezing her in pure shock. Just then, a creepy chuckle sounded right in her ear. She turned to see the female zombie inches away, licking her long razor-sharp nails with a twisted smile leaving her terrified as she screamed, a sudden warmth flooding her pants as sheer terror made her wet herself. Just then, I stepped out of the room. Tank and the female zombie paused their assault, standing respectfully beside me, with eager, puppy-like expressions showing off their work. Meanwhile, Doctor was crouching nearby, poking a corpse with his nails and pulling out blood vessels one by one, seemingly studying them. It was a scene far creepier than Tank's brute force. Liu Ruyan and the last surviving boy trembled violently, pale with dread, and at this moment, they realized I was the master of these undead monsters. "Please don't kill me. I'm sorry," the boy sobbed, begging on his knees, all his arrogance gone. Liu Ruyan snapped out of her shock and cried, "Muge, you loved me most, right? I'm your wife. Don't kill me, I'll do anything." "Sure," I murmured, stepping closer, my expression dead cold. I pulled a dagger from my inventory and drove it deep into her chest. "I want to see your heart." Another blood-curdling scream echoed down the hallway as I carved out her beating heart. Watching me, Tank drooled with hunger. I casually tossed the organ over to him. Liu Ruyan took her final rattling breath, her wide eyes frozen in absolute terror and despair. The only surviving boy wept uncontrollably. The horror before him had completely broken his mind. Hearing him cry, the female zombie giggled. Maybe she found it amusing, or maybe she wanted to offer some comfort, so she plunged her sharp nails into his throat, tearing open his carotid artery with a swift bite. His crying stopped instantly, leaving the hallway dead silent. Soon only the sound of tearing flesh and wet chewing echoed. Eliminating them felt incredibly satisfying. Suddenly I realized the campus cafeteria might still hold valuable supplies. I led my 3 underlings out of the dorm, crossed the sports field, and headed toward it. The undead were much denser here. At the entrance, several zombies were clawing at the glass doors, desperate to crawl inside. Are there survivors in there, I wondered? But these zombies were brainless. The doors opened outward, yet they kept pushing against them, rendering their efforts completely useless. Seeing these brainless creatures blocking my path, I ordered Tank to clear the way. Tank growled, charging forward to grab a zombie and slam it hard against the brick wall. He tossed the others aside like rag dolls. They snarled back, but feared Tank too much to fight back, quickly retreating. But Tank's intelligence wasn't much better. He also tried pushing the door inward instead of pulling. Except, with his monstrous strength, the glass shattered. Instantly, and the metal frame warped under the impact. Inside, the cafeteria was completely empty. Since the outbreak hit at 9 a.m., it hadn't been peak hours. But if anyone survived, they would definitely hide in the pantry, where there was plenty of food to survive on. I headed straight for the storage room. Soon, a heavy iron double door appeared, tightly shut. I walked over and gave it a push, but it was locked solid. Then my sharp hearing caught faint whispers from the other side. They were quiet, but my enhanced senses picked up every word. "Oh no, are the zombies here?" "What do we do?" a girl whimpered. A boy held her close, whispering, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." But she was still terrified. "Maybe we should run across from the couple." A middle-aged chef scoffed, "If you want to leave, then get out. You're just wasting our food." The boy scowled, wanting to talk back. But when he saw the chef holding a heavy boning knife, he shut his mouth. 5 people were hiding in this pantry. Besides the chef and the couple, 2 other girls cowered in terror. One of them happened to be my former supermarket warehouse clerk, Su Xiaoru. After I fired her, she had taken a part-time job here. "The zombies can't get in, right?" she whimpered. The chef nodded confidently. "Yeah, those beasts are brainless. If they couldn't break the outer glass, they can't break this. They actually thought that locked warehouse door would keep us out." Just as they let their guard down, a deafening crash shook the room. A massive fist punched right through the solid iron, leaving 5 perfectly defined finger marks. With such raw power, breaking down doors is a dirty job best left to my zombie giant tank. He swung his massive fist, slamming the iron door again. The whole frame shuddered, sending dust raining down as the metal caved in. Inside, those 5 were terrified. Realizing the door wouldn't hold, they scrambled down the long corridor toward a small cold room at the end. But before they could get far, Tank delivered another crushing blow. With a loud crack, half the iron door shattered into pieces. Tank squeezed his massive frame through the opening. The survivors looked back completely horrified. They had never seen a zombie this terrifyingly strong. The chef, clutching a heavy boning knife, sprinted ahead and reached the cold room first. He yelled for the others to hurry inside. Suddenly, a creepy, high-pitched giggle echoed down the dark hallway. The chef squinted and spotted a slender figure darting out from behind Tank, charging forward with terrifying speed like a gust of wind. By now, the boyfriend and the young couple had reached the cold room, but his girlfriend and Su Xiaoru were lagging way behind. Sensing they wouldn't make it, the guy made a brutal choice. The moment the third girl slipped inside, they slammed the heavy metal door shut. It clicked, locked, just as his girlfriend reached it. She banged on the steel, frantically screaming for him to open up. But no matter how hard she hit it, there was only silence. She was completely abandoned. She would never forget the cold look on his face as he locked her out, especially after he promised to protect her. Suddenly, a chilling wind rushed up from behind. She spun around and froze. My female zombie was already less than 5 meters away. Fearing she was about to be torn apart, the girl shoved Su Xiaoru forward, using her as a human shield to buy time. Xiaoru screamed as she was thrown to the ground, and my female zombie leaped, pinning her down instantly. She pinned Xiaoru's wrist to the ground, making struggle useless. She let out a creepy giggle. Having hunted with me and feasted on fresh meat lately, she was hyperactive today and ready to tear into anyone she could find. The eerie laughter sent shivers down Xiaoru's spine. Looking up at that crazed face, she felt utter despair. Knowing there was no escape, she closed her eyes and waited for the bite, praying for a quick, painless death. But the bite never came. Instead of attacking my zombie, let go of Xiaoru and pounced on the girl who had pushed her. The girl shrieked as teeth tore into her neck. Her body twitched violently from the overwhelming pain as the virus took hold. With wide, horrified eyes, the girl couldn't comprehend why the zombie had spared Xiaoru to target her, but her screams quickly faded into silence. Meanwhile, Xiaoru lay on the cold floor, eyes still shut, wondering why she was still alive. She cautiously opened her eyes. As her vision cleared, she saw a tall figure standing right in front of her, looking down. Her eyes went wide with shock as she recognized me, her former boss from the supermarket where she used to work. She never expected to run into me here. I tilted my head, studying her. Keeping her alive wasn't about our past connection. I just remembered she was a hard worker, and I happened to need someone to do laundry and wash dishes. So I decided to keep her around for now. But Xiaoru was starting to notice something strange. Not only did I look like a zombie, but the towering giant tank was standing obediently by my side. Her legs turned to jelly. She had to lean against the wall to steady her shaking knees. "Boss, are you okay?" she whispered. I nodded. Since I had disposed of Liu Ruyan earlier, my mood was excellent. I asked her, "Want your job back?" "Yes, Absolutely. Xiaoru wasn't stupid. She knew this was her ticket to survival, so she nodded like a woodpecker, terrified that a single hesitation would get her killed. Once she agreed, I ignored her, walking right past to lead Tank to the cold room. The supplies I needed were locked inside. Tank stepped forward, raising his massive fists, and began slamming them against the heavy door. Each blow fell like a sledgehammer, making the floor rattle, but the steel door refused to budge. Inside, the 3 survivors pressed against the door, holding their breath in sheer terror. "How is this zombie so powerful?" the boy whispered. But the chef reassured them, pointing out that the door was made of 5-centimeter thick steel. Even a truck couldn't break through this. "He's not getting in." The other 2 relaxed slightly. Outside, Tank kept pounding, but made no progress. He let out an angry roar, growing furious at his inability to tear them apart. But with his current strength, he really couldn't breach it. I stared at the door. If Tank couldn't break it, I'd have to handle it myself. Just as I was about to step up, Xiaoru walked over with a look of pure hatred. "Boss, I have the key to the cold room." I raised an eyebrow. She really was an exemplary worker, proving her worth on day 1. Inside, the sudden silence outside made them rejoice. The chef was especially pleased with himself. "Told you so. That monster couldn't break it and gave up." The boy nodded, hoping they would leave soon. But just as those words left his mouth, a sharp clicking sound echoed from the lock. The cylinder was actually turning. The chef froze his face, turning pale. He realized the impossible. The zombies were unlocking the door. The boy was equally paralyzed with fear. How was this even happening? As the lock clicked open, the chef panicked. "Quick, barricade the door," he shrieked. But it was entirely useless. The moment the lock clicked, Tank shoved the door open with a massive crash, scattering their barricade. As the door swung wide, I stood there looking at them. My face was cold as I looked at them, with Tank and my female zombie looming right behind me. The 3 inside gasped, their eyes darting to the girl standing beside me, Su Xiaoru, whom they had left to die. "You're alive," they stammered. Surprised, Xiaoru snapped, glaring at them. She was furious. They had locked her out to die, and if she hadn't run into me, she'd be gone. At that moment, my 3 zombie subordinates stepped forward. They closed in. Tank was still growling impatiently, while the female zombie wore a twisted, pale grin that made her look incredibly eerie. The girl who locked her out fell to her knees. "Xiaoru, please save me. I don't want to die." She sobbed completely, forgetting how cold-hearted she had been minutes ago. They actually used to be friends, but Xiaoru just shook her head coldly. "Your life isn't up to me anymore. It depends on what my boss wants to do with you." Their eyes turned to me. I calmly gave the order, "dinner time." My 3 zombie minions roared in excitement and pounced on them. Horrific screams filled the cold room, followed by the sickening sounds of tearing flesh and chewing. I remained perfectly clean amid the chaos, strolling through the cold room to inspect the inventory. The stock here was massive. With a wave of my hand, I swept everything into my storage space, replenishing all my supplies. While my zombies feasted, Xiaoru, being the only normal human, looked pale and nauseous. Luckily, I finished collecting the inventory quickly. "Let's go," I commanded, turning my back on the bloody scene and heading out. Xiaoru was terrified, dreading the thought of living with these monsters. "Boss, you won't kill me, right?" she whispered. I nodded. Since I was in a good mood, I decided to tease her. "Did you forget I used to run a livestock farm?" She looked completely blank, wondering if I saw her as livestock. On the drive back, she insisted on being the driver, eager to prove her worth so I wouldn't dispose of her. Back at the supermarket, she used to drive our delivery van. She was a natural behind the wheel, keeping the ride extremely smooth. In the back, Tank seemed highly satisfied. The messy streets were filled with wandering zombies, but they were no match for our truck, until we reached an intersection. A heavy truck was parked there holding 2 starving men. One bearded guy was sniffing half a cigarette, too cheap to light it. "Damn it, where is Wang Kong?" he grumbled. "He was supposed to find food. Where the hell did he go?" The thin guy sighed. "Probably ended up in some zombie's belly. He's been gone too long." "No way," the bearded guy replied. "Boss got through to his phone, but he hung up without speaking. He probably ditched his wife and ran off." The thin guy groaned. "Forget about him. Let's find some food. I'm starving." The bearded guy kept sniffing his cigarette. "What food? Everything has been picked clean." But as he spoke, the rumble of an approaching engine echoed in the distance. A delivery truck appeared on the left road. As experienced drivers, they could tell by the suspension and tire pressure that the truck was heavily loaded with goods. "See our dinner just arrived?" the thin guy whispered with a greedy smile. They naturally assumed some lucky survivors were returning with a massive haul of supplies. "I wonder if they have cigarettes," the bearded guy muttered eagerly. As our truck drew closer, they got a clear look at the person behind the wheel. "It's just a pretty girl," the thin guy sneered. "Sucks to be her." With a sinister grin, he started his heavy truck and hit the gas, pulling directly into the middle of the intersection to block our path completely.